Victoria Chen had built an empire. At 42, she was the CEO of a tech company worth $300 million. Her face had been on magazine covers. She'd given speeches at conferences where thousands of people hung on her every word. She wore designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and her calendar was booked solid for the next 6 months. But on that Tuesday afternoon, none of it mattered. She was in the middle of a board meeting, presenting quarterly projections when the room started spinning. The numbers on her laptop screen blurred together. Her chest tightened like someone was squeezing her heart with both hands. She gripped the edge of the conference table, trying to steady herself, but her legs felt like they'd turned to water. "Victoria, are you all right?" someone asked, but their voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. The last thing she remembered was the floor rushing up to meet her. When she woke up in the ambulance, paramedics were checking her vital signs and asking her questions she couldn't quite process. The fluorescent lights were too bright. Everything was too loud. She wanted to tell them she was fine, that she needed to get back to the meeting, but the words wouldn't come out right. At the hospital, they ran tests. Lots of tests. Her assistant, Jennifer, showed up and hovered nearby, making phone calls and trying to manage the crisis. Victoria could hear her in the hallway, her voice tight with stress, telling someone that yes, the CEO had a medical emergency, but no, they shouldn't release any statements yet. A doctor with kind eyes and graying hair finally came in around 7 in the evening. He pulled up a chair beside her bed and spoke gently, like he was talking to someone who might break. "Miss Chen, physically, you're okay. Your heart is fine. Your blood work is normal. What you experienced was a severe panic attack, likely triggered by extreme stress and burnout. Have you been feeling anxious lately?" "Having trouble sleeping?" Victoria almost laughed. Trouble sleeping? She couldn't remember the last time she'd slept more than 4 hours a night. Anxious? She lived in a constant state of low-level panic, always waiting for the next crisis, the next problem she'd have to solve. But that was just how business worked. That was the price of success. "I'm fine," she said, her voice hoarse. "I just need to get back to work." The doctor shook his head. "You're not fine. And if you don't make some changes, this will happen again, probably worse next time. I'm recommending therapy and at least a week of rest." After he left, Jennifer came back in, her face creased with worry. "I called your emergency contact, but your ex-husband isn't answering. Should I try someone else?" Victoria stared at the ceiling. Her ex-husband, Richard, had remarried last year to a woman 15 years younger. They barely spoke anymore. Her parents were traveling through Europe, probably somewhere without good cell service. Her friends? Most of them were business contacts. People she had drinks with at networking events. People who knew CEO Victoria, not the real person underneath. "It's fine," Victoria said. "I don't need anyone." Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue, but she just nodded and left to handle more calls. They moved Victoria to a private room around 8 o'clock. It was nice, as hospital rooms go. Clean white walls, a window overlooking the parking lot, a television mounted on the wall that she had no interest in watching. The nurses checked on her every hour, taking her blood pressure and asking how she felt. "Fine," she kept saying. "I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. As the night got darker and the hospital got quieter, something cold and terrible started creeping up her spine. The room felt too big and too small at the same time. The walls seemed to be moving closer. She could hear her own heartbeat loud in her ears, and she couldn't tell if it was beating too fast or too slow. She pressed the call button, waited. No one came. She pressed it again, holding it down longer this time. Still nothing. The panic was rising in her chest again, that awful feeling like she was drowning in air. Her hands started shaking. She couldn't catch her breath. She needed someone, anyone, to come in and tell her she wasn't dying, that this feeling would pass, that she wasn't completely alone in this sterile white room. She pressed the call button over and over, then gave up and just started calling out, "Hello? Is anyone there? Please, I need help." Her voice sounded small and desperate. Nothing like the commanding tone she used in boardrooms. She hated how weak she sounded, but she couldn't stop. "Please don't leave me here alone." Down the hall, Diego Rivera was getting ready to leave. It had been a long day. His 6-year-old son, Ben, had fallen off the monkey bars at school and needed stitches on his forehead. Nothing serious, but scary enough to have Diego's heart racing for the entire drive to the hospital. Diego worked as a nurse in the pediatric wing, but he'd been off duty when the school called. He'd picked up Ben, comforted his 9-year-old daughter Amy when she started crying at the sight of her brother's blood, and then driven them all to the emergency room. His mother had met them there to take Amy home, and Diego had stayed with Ben through the whole ordeal. Now, 3 hours later, Ben was all patched up and getting sleepy. Diego's mother had offered to take both kids for the night, knowing Diego had to work a double shift tomorrow. He should get home, try to sleep for a few hours. He had bills piling up, 2 jobs to juggle, and no energy left for anything else. But as he walked past one of the private rooms, he heard something that made him stop. A woman's voice, desperate and afraid. "Please don't leave me here alone." Diego knew that sound. He'd heard it before 3 years ago when his wife Elena was dying of cancer. She'd been so strong through most of it, but on the worst nights, she'd had that same note of pure fear in her voice. The sound of someone who'd reached the absolute end of their rope and didn't know how to hold on anymore. He should keep walking. He was off duty. His mother was waiting with the kids. The nurses on duty were probably just busy with another patient. They'd get to this woman eventually, but something in that voice pulled at him. Maybe it was Elena's memory. Maybe it was just his nature. He'd become a nurse because he couldn't walk past someone who needed help. Diego pushed open the door. The woman in the bed looked nothing like what he expected. She was clearly wealthy. Everything about her screamed money and power. Even in a hospital gown, even with her makeup smudged and her hair a mess, she had that air of someone used to being in charge. But her eyes were wild with panic and her hands were clutching the sheets like she was holding on for dear life. "Hey," Diego said softly, staying near the door. "I heard you calling. Are you okay?" Victoria stared at him. She wanted to say yes, to send him away, to maintain some shred of dignity. But she couldn't. The panic was too strong, the fear too overwhelming. "I can't breathe right," she gasped. "Something's wrong. The nurses didn't come. I pressed the button but no one came and I don't know what's happening to me." Diego recognized a panic attack immediately. He'd seen enough of them, both professionally and personally. He stepped closer, his movements slow and non-threatening. "Nothing's wrong with you," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You're having a panic attack. It feels awful, but it's not dangerous. You're safe." "I'm not safe," Victoria said, and she sounded almost angry about it. "Nothing feels safe. Everything's wrong." Diego pulled up the chair and sat down. "I know it feels that way, but I promise you're okay. Let's try something. Can you look at me?" Victoria focused on his face. He had warm brown eyes and the kind of steady presence that made you feel like everything might actually be okay. "Good. Now I want you to breathe with me. We're going to do it slow. In through your nose for 4 counts, hold it for 4. Out through your mouth for 4. Can you try that?" They breathed together. At first, Victoria couldn't match his rhythm. Her breaths were too quick, too shallow. But Diego was patient. He kept counting, kept breathing, and gradually, she found herself following his lead. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out again and again, and again. Slowly, impossibly, the panic started to loosen its grip. Her heartbeat settled. The room stopped spinning. She could think again. "There you go," Diego said, and he was smiling a little. "See? You're doing great." Victoria felt tears on her cheeks and realized she was crying. She never cried. Not when Richard served her divorce papers. Not when investors threatened to pull funding. Not when she'd worked 70-hour weeks for months on end. But now in front of this complete stranger, she was falling apart. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know why I'm like this." "Don't apologize," Diego said. "You've got nothing to be sorry for. Panic attacks are scary. They make you feel like you're dying. It's okay to be upset." They sat in silence for a moment. Victoria wiped at her face with the back of her hand, trying to pull herself together. "Thank you," she said finally. "You didn't have to stop." "Yeah, I did," Diego said simply. "You needed help. Are you one of the nurses here?" "I work in pediatrics. Different floor. I was just leaving when I heard you." Victoria looked at him more closely then. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes and his shoulders had that weighted down look of someone carrying too much. His scrubs were wrinkled and she could see a coffee stain on his sleeve. "You should go," she said. "I'm fine now." But the truth was she wasn't fine. The panic had subsided, but the fear was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. And the thought of being alone in this room again made her chest tighten. Diego must have seen something in her face because he settled back in his chair. "I've got a few minutes," he said. "Why don't you tell me what happened? Why are you here?" And somehow Victoria found herself talking. Not the polished, controlled way she spoke in interviews or presentations. She rambled. She said things she'd never said to anyone. About the pressure. About waking up at 3 in the morning with her mind racing through problems. About how she couldn't remember the last time she'd done something just because she wanted to, not because it was necessary for business. Diego listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer easy solutions or tell her to just relax or suggest she try yoga. He just listened like her words mattered, like she mattered. At some point, she started talking about Richard, about how their marriage had fallen apart because she'd chosen work over everything else, about how he'd told her she was married to her company, not to him, about how she'd thought he was wrong at the time, but now she wondered if he'd been right. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Victoria said. "Without the job, without the title, without the company. I'm just empty." Diego was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer." Victoria looked up, startled by the shift. "I'm so sorry," she said automatically. Diego nodded. "Thanks, it was hard." "Still is some days." "But you know what I learned? All that time we spent together when she was sick, all those hours in hospital rooms just like this one, she told me something I'll never forget. She said, 'When everything else gets stripped away, what's left is who you really are. And that's the only thing that matters.'" Victoria felt something crack open inside her chest. "I don't think there's anything left," she whispered. "There is," Diego said firmly. "Trust me. It's there. You just can't see it right now because you're buried under all the other stuff. The expectations. The pressure. The person you think you're supposed to be." They talked until almost midnight. Victoria learned that Diego had 2 kids, that he worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, that his mother helped with childcare. She learned that he loved his work but sometimes felt like he was drowning in responsibility. She learned that he hadn't dated anyone since his wife died because he couldn't imagine having room in his life for one more thing. And Diego learned that Victoria lived alone in a penthouse apartment. That she had millions of dollars but no one to spend time with. That she'd built an empire but forgotten to build a life. That she was terrified of being weak, of needing people, of admitting she couldn't handle everything on her own. When Diego finally stood up to leave, Victoria felt that panic start to rise again. "Wait," she said, then caught herself. "I'm sorry. You need to go. Thank you for staying, really." Diego paused at the door. "You're going to be okay," he said. "This is scary right now, but you're going to be okay." After he left, Victoria lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, she let herself admit the truth. She was not okay. She hadn't been okay for a long time. And she had no idea how to fix it. But somewhere in the back of her mind, she kept hearing Diego's calm voice. Kept remembering the way he'd stayed when he didn't have to. Kept thinking about what his wife had said about who you really are when everything else gets stripped away. Maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth finding underneath all the armor she'd built around herself. Maybe it wasn't too late to figure out who Victoria Chen really was, beyond the titles and the success and the carefully constructed image. But first, she had to survive the night, and for now that felt like enough. Victoria woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the hospital window. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The board meeting, the collapse, the panic attack, and Diego, the nurse who'd stayed with her when no one else had. She felt embarrassed now in the harsh light of day. She'd told a complete stranger things she'd never told anyone. She'd cried in front of him. She'd been weak, vulnerable, everything she'd spent her entire adult life trying not to be. The door opened and a different nurse came in with breakfast. Hospital food on a plastic tray, scrambled eggs that looked like yellow rubber, toast, orange juice in a tiny cup. Victoria stared at it and felt her stomach turn. "Good morning, Ms. Chen. How are you feeling today?" "Fine," Victoria said automatically. "When can I leave?" "The doctor wants to see you first. He should be by in about an hour." After the nurse left, Victoria reached for her phone. 47 missed calls, 63 emails, 28 text messages. She scrolled through them with a growing sense of dread. Most were from Jennifer, updating her on damage control. Some were from board members, their concern thinly veiling their worry about the company. A few were from business contacts, who'd somehow heard about her incident, and were checking in with the kind of fake sympathy that made her skin crawl. Not one was from someone who actually cared about her as a person. She was halfway through responding to emails when Jennifer arrived, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She was carrying Victoria's laptop, a change of clothes, and her usual efficiency. "Thank God you're okay," Jennifer said, though her eyes were already scanning Victoria's face, probably assessing how bad she looked. "I've been managing the press inquiries. So far we've kept it vague. Just said you had a medical issue, but you're fine now. The board wants to meet tomorrow to discuss—" "Jennifer," Victoria interrupted. "What time is it?" 8:30. Don't you usually start at 9? Jennifer blinked, confused by the question. "Yes, but this was important. I wanted to get here early to brief you before—" "You should have slept," Victoria said quietly. "You didn't need to come this early." Jennifer looked at her like she'd grown a second head. In all the years they'd worked together, Victoria had never once suggested that Jennifer should prioritize rest over work. Work always came first, always. "I'm fine," Jennifer said, using the same phrase Victoria always used. "Anyway, I brought your things. The doctor said you might be released today, so I thought—" The door opened again and Victoria's heart did an unexpected flip. It was Diego, still in his scrubs, carrying a cup of coffee. He stopped when he saw Jennifer. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know you had company. I can come back." "No, it's fine," Victoria said quickly, then felt foolish for sounding so eager. Jennifer looked between them, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "I'll go make some calls," she said, excusing herself. After she left, Diego came closer, setting the coffee on the bedside table. "I wasn't sure if you'd be awake yet. I'm about to start my shift, but I wanted to check on you. How did you sleep?" "Not great," Victoria admitted, "but better than I expected." "That's good." He smiled, and Victoria noticed how tired he looked. "I brought you decent coffee. Hospital coffee is terrible." Victoria reached for the cup and their fingers brushed. It was nothing, just a momentary touch, but she felt it like an electric shock. She wrapped her hands around the cup, grateful for something to do. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Last night staying with me and now this. You don't even know me." Diego shrugged. "You needed help. That's enough." They talked for a few minutes before Diego had to leave for his rounds. After he left, Victoria sat there holding the coffee, which had gone lukewarm. She couldn't remember the last time someone had done something kind for her without wanting anything in return. The doctor came by around 10. He was the same one from yesterday, with the kind eyes and gentle manner. "How are you feeling, Ms. Chen?" "Better," Victoria said, and it was partly true. "Good. I'm going to discharge you today, but with conditions. I want you to start therapy immediately. I'm also recommending at least a week off work. Preferably 2. Your body and mind need rest. I can't take 2 weeks off. The company will survive without you for 2 weeks," the doctor said firmly. "You won't survive without this break. I'm not asking, Ms. Chen, I'm telling you. This is medical advice. If you ignore it, you'll end up back here, or somewhere worse." Victoria wanted to argue, but something in his tone stopped her. He wasn't trying to control her. He was trying to save her. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll take the time off." After he left, she called Jennifer back in and told her. Jennifer looked panicked. 2 weeks? "Victoria, the investors' meeting is in 10 days. The product launches in 3 weeks. We need you for—" "You'll handle it," Victoria said. "You're more than capable, and if the board has a problem with it, they can find a new CEO." The words came out more forcefully than she intended, but she meant them. For the first time in her career, she was putting herself first. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. Jennifer stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll handle it." Victoria got dressed in the clothes Jennifer had brought. A cashmere sweater and designer jeans that probably cost more than Diego made in a week. She hated herself a little bit for thinking that way, for always measuring everything in terms of money and worth. Before she left, she did something impulsive. She asked the nurse at the desk which floor Diego worked on. "Pediatrics. 5th floor?" Victoria took the elevator up. She told herself she just wanted to say thank you properly. That was all. Just a quick thank you, and then she'd leave and never see him again. The pediatric floor was completely different from the sterile adult wing. The walls were painted with colorful murals of animals and cartoon characters. There were toys scattered in waiting areas. Children's laughter mixed with occasional crying. It felt alive in a way the rest of the hospital didn't. She found Diego at the nurse's station reviewing charts. He looked up when she approached, surprise crossing his face. "Victoria, I thought you'd be gone by now. I'm leaving soon. I just wanted to say thank you, properly." She hesitated, then pulled out her wallet. "Let me give you something. For your time last night." Diego's expression changed. The warmth in his eyes cooled. "I don't want your money. I didn't mean to insult you. I just thought—" "I know what you thought," Diego said quietly. "That everything has a price. That kindness is a transaction. But that's not how it works in my world." Victoria felt her face flush. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." Diego was quiet for a moment, then his expression softened. "Look, I know you're used to a certain way of doing things. But some things can't be bought. Some things are just human, okay?" Victoria nodded, feeling smaller than she had in years. She tucked her wallet away. "You're right. I'm sorry." "It's okay," Diego said. "Take care of yourself, Victoria." She walked away feeling worse than before. She'd managed to insult the one person who'd shown her genuine kindness. Perfect. Just perfect. Back at her penthouse, Victoria felt like a stranger in her own home. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. Spotlessly clean. Decorated by an expensive interior designer, cold and perfect and empty. She stood in her living room, looking at the expensive art on the walls, the designer furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city skyline, and felt absolutely nothing. The first few days were the hardest. She didn't know what to do with herself without work. She'd wake up at 5 in the morning, her mind automatically running through her schedule before remembering she didn't have one. She'd reach for her laptop, then force herself to close it. She'd start to check emails, then stop. The therapist the hospital recommended had an opening on Thursday. Dr. Patricia Holmes was in her 60s, with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude that Victoria appreciated. "Tell me about your panic attack," Dr. Holmes said in their first session. Victoria told her, and then somehow she found herself telling her everything else. About the divorce, about the loneliness, about waking up every morning with a sense of dread that followed her through the day, about the sleeping pills she'd started taking, about the glass of wine that had turned into a bottle, about how success had become a prison she couldn't escape from. "Do you have any friends?" Dr. Holmes asked. "Real friends, not business contacts." Victoria thought about it. "No," she admitted. "I don't think I do. What about family?" "My parents live overseas. We talk maybe once a month. My ex-husband remarried. I have a sister in California. But we haven't been close in years." "So you're isolated." "I'm independent," Victoria corrected. "There's a difference between independence and isolation," Dr. Holmes said gently. "Independence is choosing to stand on your own 2 feet. Isolation is building walls so high that no one can reach you even when you need them." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She thought about that night in the hospital, calling out for help. "Please don't leave me here alone." How desperate she'd been. How terrified. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria said, her voice cracking. "I don't know how to be anything other than what I am." "Then we'll figure it out together," Dr. Holmes said. "But first I want you to do something for me. I want you to reconnect with real life. Do something that has nothing to do with your business. Something that matters to actual people. Can you do that?" Victoria left the session with that assignment rolling around in her head. Reconnect with real life. But what did that even mean? Her entire life was meetings and deals and strategy sessions. She didn't know how to be a regular person anymore. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Diego, about the way he'd talked about his wife, about his kids, about his work. There was something real about him, something grounded. He had problems, she knew that. Money problems, exhaustion, the weight of single parenthood. But he also had something she didn't. Purpose, connection, meaning beyond profit margins and stock prices. 3 days after leaving the hospital, Victoria did something crazy. She called the hospital and asked to speak to the volunteer coordinator. "I'd like to volunteer," she said, "in the pediatric wing." The coordinator sounded surprised but pleased. "That's wonderful. We always need volunteers. Can you come in tomorrow for orientation?" Victoria agreed before she could talk herself out of it. Then she sat on her couch staring at her phone, wondering what she'd just done. She'd never volunteered for anything in her life. She didn't know the first thing about working with children. She had no idea what she was doing. But Dr. Holmes had said to reconnect with real life, and somehow the pediatric wing felt like the right place to start. It had nothing to do with her being CEO. It had nothing to do with her money or her success. It was just helping, being useful in a way that mattered. The next day she showed up for orientation in jeans and a simple blouse. No designer labels this time. The coordinator, a cheerful woman named Ruth, gave her a tour and explained the basics. Reading to kids, playing games, just being there to provide comfort and distraction for children who were sick or scared. It's simple work, Ruth said, but it makes a huge difference. These kids need normalcy. They need someone who isn't a doctor or a nurse, someone who can just be present with them. Victoria nodded, taking it all in. She could do this. How hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. Her first day of actual volunteering was a disaster. She was assigned to read stories to a group of young patients in the playroom. She sat down with the book. 5 kids gathered around her and opened to the first page. She read stiffly, mechanically, the way she'd read quarterly reports. The kids squirmed. One little boy interrupted her to ask why she was reading like a robot. Another girl asked if they could have a different book. A third simply got up and walked away. Victoria felt her face burn with embarrassment. She pushed through the story, but by the end, most of the kids had found other things to do. She'd never failed at anything so completely in her life. She was packing up to leave, convinced she'd never come back, when a familiar voice spoke behind her. Rough first day? She turned to find Diego leaning against the doorway, an amused smile on his face. You saw that? Victoria asked, mortified. I saw. You read like you're presenting to a boardroom. I don't know how else to read. Diego came over and sat down beside her. Kids don't want perfection. They want connection. You've got to feel the story. Make it come alive. Use different voices for different characters. Get excited about the exciting parts. Make them laugh. I'm not good at making people laugh, Victoria said. Then learn, Diego said simply. Look, you could have done anything with your time off. You chose to be here. That's something. But if you're going to do this, actually do it. Don't just go through the motions. Victoria looked at him. Why are you helping me? Diego shrugged. Because you're trying. That counts for something. Over the next week, Victoria kept coming back, and slowly, with Diego's occasional guidance and her own stubborn determination, she got better. She learned to use funny voices. She learned to ask kids questions about the stories. She learned to sit on the floor with them instead of keeping her distance. She learned to laugh at herself when she messed up. She also learned the kids' names. There was little Sophie, 7 years old, who loved princess stories. Tommy, who was obsessed with dinosaurs. Mia, who was shy but would light up when you talked to her about art. Each of them was fighting their own battle with illness, but they still found ways to smile, to play, to be kids. It humbled her in a way nothing else ever had. One afternoon, she was sitting with a girl named Lily, who was recovering from surgery. Lily was quiet, withdrawn, clearly in pain. Victoria didn't try to cheer her up or tell her everything would be okay. She just sat there holding the girl's hand. Why are you so sad? Lily asked. Suddenly, Victoria was startled. What makes you think I'm sad? Your eyes, Lily said. They look sad. Like my mom's eyes when she worries about me. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. This child, dealing with her own pain, had seen right through her. I guess I am a little sad, Victoria admitted. I've been working so hard for so long that I forgot how to be happy. That's silly, Lily said. Being happy is easy. You just have to find things that make you smile. Like what? Lily thought about it. Like when my dad reads me stories in funny voices. Or when my dog licks my face. Or when it snows and everything looks pretty. Little things. Victoria squeezed her hand. You're pretty smart, you know that? Lily smiled for the first time that day. I know. When Diego found her later, Victoria was still sitting with Lily, who had fallen asleep holding her hand. You're getting good at this, Diego said quietly. I'm learning, Victoria replied. These kids, they're amazing. They're going through so much, but they still find joy in small things. I'd forgotten how to do that, Diego nodded. They have a gift for that. Being present. Not worrying about tomorrow. Just being here now. They stood there for a moment, watching Lily sleep peacefully. Thank you, Victoria said, for not giving up on me. For showing me this. Diego looked at her and something passed between them. understanding, recognition, the beginning of something neither of them was ready to name yet. "You're welcome," he said.
Now come on.
"There's a kid in room 3 who's been asking for the dinosaur lady. Apparently you do a really good T-Rex roar." Victoria laughed, surprising herself. A real laugh from somewhere deep inside. "I do a terrible T-Rex roar." "Exactly. That's why they love it." As they walked down the hallway together, Victoria felt something shift inside her. She was still lost. She still had a long way to go, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. She was learning to be human again. One funny voice, one held hand, one moment of real connection at a time. 3 weeks into volunteering, Victoria was reading a story about a brave knight to a group of kids when Diego appeared in the doorway. He looked stressed, running his hand through his hair in that way she'd learned meant something was wrong. She finished the chapter and told the kids she'd be back tomorrow, then went to find him. He was in the break room, staring at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. "What's wrong?" she asked. Diego looked up, seeming surprised to see her. "My car had finally died. I've been nursing it along for months, but the mechanic says it's done. The repair would cost more than the car's worth." "So get a new car," Victoria said, then immediately regretted it when she saw his expression. "Right. I'll just pull a few $1,000s out of my magic piggy bank," Diego said, his voice tight. "Between rent, childcare, my mom's medications, and everything else, I'm barely keeping my head above water. I need this car. I have 2 jobs. My kids have school. My mom has doctor's appointments." Victoria felt foolish. Of course, he couldn't just buy a new car. That was her world, not his. In her world, problems could be solved with money. In his world, every dollar was already spoken for. "I'm sorry," she said. "That was insensitive," Diego sighed. "No, I'm sorry. I'm just stressed. I'll figure something out. I always do." He left before she could say anything else, and Victoria stood there feeling useless. She wanted to help, but she knew he'd refuse money. He'd made that clear. But there had to be something she could do. That evening, she called Diego. He sounded surprised to hear from her. "How did you get my number?" "I asked Ruth for emergency contact information. Told her we were coordinating volunteer schedules," Victoria said, which was only a small lie. "Look, I know you don't want money, but what if I drove you to work for a while? Until you figure out the car situation?" "Victoria, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Please, let me help." There was a long pause. Then Diego said, "Okay, but just for a week or 2. Until I can save up for something. Deal." The next morning, Victoria pulled up to Diego's apartment building at 6 a.m. It was in a neighborhood she'd never been to before, the kind of place where kids played in the streets and neighbors actually knew each other's names. His building was old but well-maintained, with flower boxes in some windows and bikes chained to the railings. Diego came out looking tired but grateful. He slid into her car and stared at the leather interior. "This is a really nice car," he said. "It's just a car," Victoria replied, though she knew her SUV probably cost more than he made in a year. She felt self-conscious about it now. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Diego said, "You don't have to do this every day. I can take the bus sometimes. It's fine. I'm up early anyway. Old habits. Old habits from running a company." "Yeah. My assistant probably still expects me to be at my desk by 7. "Do you miss it?" Diego asked. "The work?" Victoria thought about it. "Parts of it. I miss feeling useful. Feeling like what I do matters. But I don't miss the pressure. The constant stress. Waking up every morning with my chest tight, worrying about what crisis I'd have to handle." "What you're doing now matters," Diego said. "You should see Sophie's face when you show up. She asks about you every day you're not there." Victoria felt warmth spread through her chest. "Really? Really? You're good with the kids. You care about them. That matters more than any business deal." They fell into a routine. Every morning, Victoria would pick up Diego at 6. They'd drive to the hospital, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his kids. His daughter Zoe, who was 9 and loved reading almost as much as she loved correcting people's grammar. His son Ben, who was 6 and believed with absolute certainty that he would grow up to be a dinosaur. Victoria found herself looking forward to these morning drives more than anything else in her day. Diego was easy to talk to. He didn't treat her like a CEO or a success story or a cautionary tale. He just treated her like a person. One morning, Diego's phone rang while they were driving. He answered, and Victoria could hear a woman's voice on the other end, speaking rapidly in Spanish. Diego's expression changed, and he started responding in Spanish, his voice tense. After he hung up, Victoria glanced at him. "Everything okay?" "That was my mom. Ben's sick. Fever and throwing up. She's worried it might be the flu. I need to—" He stopped, running his hand over his face. "I need to be there, but I have a double shift today. We're already short-staffed." "Go be with your son," Victoria said immediately. "I'll drive you home. I can't just skip work. We need the money and they're counting on me." "Diego, your son is sick. That comes first." He looked at her, conflicted. Victoria could see the war going on behind his eyes. The need to be with his child versus the need to keep his job, to pay the bills, to hold everything together. "What if I help?" Victoria said suddenly. "With your mom. I could go to your place, give her a break. I'm not working." "I have the time." Diego stared at her. "You want to take care of my sick kid?" "I want to help. Please, let me do this." Diego was quiet for a long moment. Then he gave her his address and called his mom back to explain. When they got to his apartment, his mother, Rosa, opened the door. She was a small woman in her 60s with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a bun. She looked exhausted. She and Diego had a rapid conversation in Spanish, and Victoria caught her name a few times. Rosa kept glancing at her with curiosity. Finally, Diego turned to Victoria. "Are you sure about this?" "I'm sure." Diego showed her where everything was. Medicine in the bathroom cabinet. Ginger ale in the fridge. His phone number written on a piece of paper stuck to the refrigerator. Then he left for work, and Victoria was alone with Rosa and two kids she'd never met. Rosa made coffee and sat down at the small kitchen table with Victoria. "You are the woman Diego talks about," she said in accented English. "The CEO, former CEO," Victoria said. "I'm taking some time off. He says you volunteer at the hospital, that you are learning to be with children." "Trying to learn," Victoria corrected. Rosa smiled. "Diego, he is good at seeing people." "Really seeing them?" "He says you have a good heart, but you don't know it yet." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm trying to figure that out." A weak voice called from one of the bedrooms. "Abuela?" Rosa started to get up, but Victoria stopped her. "Let me, you rest." "Which room?" "The one on the left." Victoria went into the small bedroom. Ben was in bed, his face flushed with fever, his dark hair sticking to his forehead. He looked at her with confusion. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice raspy. "I'm Victoria. I'm a friend of your dad's. Your abuela needs to rest, so I'm here to help. How are you feeling?" "My tummy hurts," Ben said, and his lip trembled. "I want my dad." "I know, sweetie. He's at work, but he'll be home later. Can I get you anything? Some water? Ginger ale?" Ben nodded. "Ginger ale, please." Victoria got him the drink and sat on the edge of his bed. He sipped it slowly, watching her with suspicious eyes. "You're the dinosaur lady," he said suddenly. Victoria blinked. "The what?" "From the hospital. Zoe said there's a lady who does funny dinosaur sounds." "That's you?" Victoria felt herself smile. "Guilty. Can you do one now?" "You're sick. You should rest, please." Ben's eyes were wide and pleading. Victoria sighed and did her terrible T-Rex impression. Ben giggled, then held his stomach. "Ow, but that was funny." Over the next few hours, Victoria took care of Ben. She brought him medicine when it was time. She changed his sheets when he got sick. She read him stories in funny voices until he fell asleep. She'd never done anything like this before, and she was terrified of doing it wrong, but somehow she managed. Zoe came home from school around 3. She was a serious-looking girl with her father's dark eyes and a backpack covered in book-related pins. She stopped in the doorway when she saw Victoria. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone much more demanding than her brother's had been. "I'm Victoria. I'm helping your abuela today because Ben's sick." "Where's my dad?" "At work. He'll be home around 6. Zoe studied her for a long moment. "You're the CEO lady Dad talks about." "Is that what he calls me?" Victoria asked, amused. "No, he calls you Victoria. But abuela told me you're a CEO. That's like a boss, right?" "The biggest boss?" "Something like that." "So why are you here taking care of my brother?" It was a fair question. Victoria thought about how to answer. "Because your dad needed help and I wanted to give it." Zoe seemed to consider this. Then she said, "Okay, can you help me with my homework?" "It's fractions." They sat at the kitchen table and Victoria helped Zoe with math. Then they made dinner together, simple chicken soup that Rosa had started earlier. Zoe talked the whole time, mostly about the book she was reading and how her teacher didn't understand that the main character in their current novel was clearly meant to be a metaphor for societal expectations. Victoria found herself enjoying the conversation, even though she understood maybe half of Zoe's literary analysis. Diego came home just after 6, looking exhausted. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. Zoe was setting the table. Victoria was ladling soup into bowls. Rosa was in the living room watching the news. The apartment smelled like food and felt warm and lived in. "How's Ben?" he asked immediately. "Better," Victoria said. "His fever broke about an hour ago. He's sleeping." Diego let out a breath, his shoulders sagging with relief. "Thank you, really. I don't know what I would have done without Dad." Zoe interrupted. "Victoria helped me with fractions and she knows about books. Did you know she's read Pride and Prejudice?" "I did not know that," Diego said, smiling slightly. They ate dinner together, all of them crowded around the small table. It was nothing fancy, just soup and bread and conversation. But Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so comfortable, so welcome somewhere. After dinner, Diego walked her to her car. The evening was cool, and she could hear kids playing somewhere nearby, their laughter floating on the air. "You didn't have to stay all day," Diego said. "I wanted to," Victoria replied. "Your kids are great. Your mom is wonderful. Thank you for letting me be part of your day." "I think you have that backwards," Diego said softly. "You helped us again." They stood there in the fading light and something shifted between them. Victoria felt it, this pull toward him that had been growing stronger with each conversation, each shared moment. "Diego," she started, not sure what she was going to say. But before she could figure it out, his phone rang. He glanced at it and sighed. "My second job. I have to go in for a few hours. Night shift at the clinic. You're working another shift? You've been up since 5 a.m. "Yeah, well, bills don't pay themselves." He smiled, but she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "Thanks again, Victoria, for everything." After he went back inside, Victoria sat in her car for a while thinking. Diego was working himself to exhaustion. His mom was tired. His kids needed him. And she had money sitting in her accounts doing nothing but growing while good people struggled. But she knew Diego wouldn't accept charity. He'd made that clear. She needed to find another way to help. The next morning, she brought coffee for both of them again. Diego settled into the passenger seat with a grateful sigh. "How's Ben?" Victoria asked. "Much better. He ate breakfast this morning. Back to his normal, dinosaur-obsessed self." "Good. And how are you?" Diego glanced at her. "Tired, but that's normal." "It shouldn't be normal," Victoria said. "Working yourself to death shouldn't be normal." "What else am I supposed to do?" Diego asked, and there was a note of frustration in his voice. "I have kids to feed, bills to pay, a mom who needs her medications. I do what I have to do." Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What if there was another way?" "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about what Dr. Holmes told me, about reconnecting with real life. The volunteering has been good, but I want to do more. I want to make a real difference." She took a breath. "What if I set up a fund for families at the hospital who are struggling financially, for single parents like you who are drowning in bills while trying to take care of sick kids? Nothing that would pay everything, but enough to ease the burden. Enough so they don't have to choose between being with their child and making rent." Diego stared at her. That's a big idea. I have the money. It's just sitting there. I should use it for something that matters, but why?" Diego asked. "Why do you care so much about this?" Victoria thought about the past few weeks, about Sophie and Tommy and Lily, about Ben with his fever and Zoe with her books, about Rosa, trying to care for her grandchildren while her son worked himself to exhaustion, about all the families she'd seen at the hospital, trying their best with too little support. "Because you were right," she said. "What I'm doing now matters, and I want it to matter even more." Diego was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're something else, you know that?" Victoria felt warmth spread through her from where his hand touched hers. "I'm learning to be," she said softly, as they drove through the morning traffic. Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, purpose, the sense that she was finally on the right path. She was building something new, not a company or an empire, but a life, a real life, full of real people and real connections. It was messy and complicated and sometimes uncomfortable, but it was also beautiful. And for the first time since her breakdown, Victoria felt truly alive. Victoria spent the next 2 weeks working on her foundation idea. She met with lawyers, accountants, and hospital administrators. She wanted to do this right, to create something that would actually help families without making them feel like charity cases. The foundation would provide emergency funds for medical families struggling with basic expenses, transportation, food, rent, the things that fell through the cracks of insurance coverage. She was sitting in a coffee shop, reviewing paperwork when her phone rang. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. Victoria hadn't talked to her assistant in almost a month. "Hi, Jennifer." "Victoria." Jennifer's voice was strained. "We need to talk. Can you come to the office?" "What's wrong?" "Just, please come. Today if you can." An hour later, Victoria walked into her company's building for the first time in weeks. It felt strange, like visiting a place she used to live. Everything looked the same, but she felt different. People stared as she walked past. Some smiled. Others quickly looked away. Jennifer was waiting in Victoria's office, and she wasn't alone. 3 board members sat in the chairs across from Victoria's desk. The desk that used to be hers. "What's going on?" Victoria asked. Richard Paxton, the oldest board member, cleared his throat. "Victoria, good to see you. How are you feeling?" "I'm fine." "What's this about?" "There's been some concern about your ability to continue leading this company." Victoria felt ice in her stomach. "Excuse me?" Jennifer jumped in. "There was an article. A journalist found out about your hospital stay and your volunteering. They're calling it a breakdown, questioning your stability." Richard pulled out his phone and showed her the article. The headline made her feel sick. "Tech CEO's public breakdown, is Victoria Chen fit to lead?" The article had everything. Photos of her at the hospital. Quotes from anonymous sources saying she'd been erratic before her collapse. Speculation about her mental health. And worst of all, pictures of her with Diego and his kids implying something inappropriate. "This is garbage," Victoria said, her voice shaking. "I had a panic attack. I got help." "That's not a breakdown." "The investors don't see it that way," another board member said. "They're worried. Some are threatening to pull funding unless you step back." "Step back from my own company?" "Just temporarily," Richard said. "Until this blows over. Take more time off. Let Jennifer run things for a while. It's what's best for the company." Victoria looked at Jennifer, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "Did you know about this?" "They told me this morning," Jennifer said quietly. "I tried to call you right away." Victoria sat down in her chair, her mind racing. This was her company. She'd built it from nothing. 16-hour days, sacrificed relationships, missed holidays, all to create something that mattered. And now they wanted to push her out because she'd been human enough to break down? "No," Victoria said. Richard blinked. "I'm sorry?" I said no. I'm not stepping back. I took medical leave, which I was entitled to. I got treatment, which was necessary. And I'm continuing that treatment, which is healthy. None of that makes me unfit to lead. "Victoria, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable." Victoria cut him off. "What's unreasonable is punishing someone for taking care of their mental health. What's unreasonable is perpetuating the idea that asking for help makes you weak. What's unreasonable is running a company into the ground because the CEO is too afraid to admit they're human." The room was silent. Jennifer was staring at her with something that looked like admiration. "If the investors have a problem with me taking care of myself, then maybe they're not the right investors for this company," Victoria continued. "And if the board wants to remove me, then do it. But I'm not going to step aside quietly because I had the audacity to need help." Richard stood up. "We'll discuss this with the full board. But Victoria, you need to understand. This isn't personal. It's business." "Everything is personal," Victoria said. "That's what I'm learning. Business is personal. Leadership is personal. Life is personal. And if you can't understand that, then maybe you're the ones who shouldn't be here." After they left, Jennifer sat down across from Victoria. "That was amazing," she said. "It was stupid," Victoria replied, her hand shaking now that the adrenaline was fading.